I will next introduce our final speaker of section 1, and then we'll have our Q&A, and intermission, and section 2 will begin. Joel DuBois has been working in the environmental field for more than 28 years, much of that time right here in New York. His work focuses on streams and watersheds, studying how they function, how they change, and how we can restore and care for them. Over the years, he's worked on everything from stream assessments and water quality monitoring to natural channel design and large-scale stream restoration projects. Joel studied environmental studies at the State University of New York at Buffalo, and he's continued building on that foundation through extensive professional training, including geomorphic training with wildland hydrology and courses in erosion control, floodplain management, and water resource modeling. Throughout his career, he's led the assessment, design, construction, management, and monitoring of many stream restoration projects across New York State. He's also carried out watershed studies throughout the Catskills that help communities understand their streams and decide where restoration work can make the biggest difference. We're really lucky to have someone with Joel's depth of experience working in our region. Please join me in welcoming Joel DuBois.
Okay. Thanks, everyone, for coming today and for thinking of me to speak today. A couple of colleagues and I did a walkover of the Sawkill back in 2006, wrote it up in 2007. I like the term baseline that they use for this talk in that it gives us sort of a starting point for observations and monitoring, and the idea that this is going to be revisited now, I think, is great, and that it'll give us sort of be able to determine rates of change for all the processes that we observed in this original walkover. Go ahead. Just more intro information. That's one of my favorite pictures there. But often when we get involved with managing watersheds, we jump right into sort of problem identification. One of the core tenets of the way we approach the river restoration process is not only by going in and identifying problems, but also identifying stable reference reaches that we want to mimic. I'm not going to read all the words on all of these slides, so I encourage everyone to read along. But we really want to go out there and get an idea of why we're having instability, understand what site-specific modifications and restoration strategies are going to be effective. Let's go to the next slide. Again, just to give sort of a background of what we're trying to get with these initial walkovers. Just an incredible amount of dynamics and interplay between different stream processes, and we really want to identify the best approaches. We don't want to spend money on something that may solve a problem in one spot but create problems in others, or not solve the problem the way we thought it would because of other issues. Systemic incision, for instance, we can go along and armor up a bank, but if the river is cutting down, it can leave those treatments abandoned and undermined. So we just want to make sure that we have a really holistic view of what processes are active and the rates that those processes are happening. Bank retreat, natural process, but it can be accelerated to rates that are unmanageable, unsustainable, and that often happens as a result of management activities. Let's go ahead. What are we trying to accomplish and why? And this is very, very important. Not every stream bank that's failing is the same. We go out, we find a lot of channel instability and bank failures that don't have the same impact as one another. Beth mentioned the geologic history of the watershed here. We may have one bank that is largely made up of these geologic sediments, the till, the glacial lake clay sediments that have an incredible impact on water quality, while other banks may be mostly made up of alluvium, relatively clean sand, gravel, cobble. They don't have, for the same amount of bank retreat, same rates of retreat, they don't have the same impact on water quality. We really want to make sure we're going after the right spots to achieve what we're trying to achieve. Let's go ahead. So to get to what we actually did here in the Sawkill all those years ago, we did a Rosgan Level 1 classification, which is more or less a remote assessment. We look at aerial photos, topographic maps. We did an aerial photography evaluation that looked at a number of different flight series to compare the location of the stream in each one of those different flights. And then we did a on-the-ground corridor walkover from the headwaters that Beth described all the way to the confluence with the Esopus, about 19.5 miles, and as Beth mentioned, a 42 square mile drainage area, which is considerable, especially at these kinds of steep gradients. So you can see sort of the river miles in each of the towns and how many we inventoried. Let's go ahead to the next. Here's another sort of overview of the watershed, also in pink. I think that's just a coincidence. But this is just to give you sort of an overview of where it lies in New York State, in Ulster / a little tiny bit of Greene County, it looks like. And also a land cover. That's one of the things I'd like to point out is the incredible amount of forested cover of this watershed. That's a great indicator, a really great predictor of water quality. So these watersheds in the Catskills, the ones we've mapped are well over 95% forested. So that is a great credit to the land managers that have all come before us. Let's go ahead. This is another watershed image. It is marked out with our stream stationing, both in feet and miles. I think the map over there has the stationing on it, and then other maps for everyone's commentary. But these, just to give you sort of an overhead. Let's go ahead. So the level 1 stream classification provides a consistent framework of reference for communicating stream morphology and condition. Again, I'm not going to read all the words, but basically to say, we can say after we've done this kind of a stream classification, we've got a Class C stream here. And for folks who, work in this business, that conveys a lot of information just on its own. But what we're basically looking at is how connected are these streams to their floodplain? Do they really need to get, super deep before they can access a floodplain? Are those depths more than what the boundary conditions of the channel can tolerate? What kind of steepness are they? So channel shape, channel slope, connection to floodplain, and how entrenched they are, meaning once they do get out on a floodplain, how wide can they spread in comparison to their channel width? Is it, a floodplain that's 5 times as wide as the channel, or is it maybe only 2 times, very confined? And the level 1 is done essentially from remote sense data. Let's go ahead. It gives us this broad-based watershed scale classification. Again, so many words. We're trying to get back. It really does give you sort of that holistic view of it that you need to then determine what kind of problems are we likely to find in different areas, what should we be looking for, what's not likely and would, sometimes does turn up anyway, which, surprises like that happen and are generally something that you want to pay attention to and look closer at. But it really can help us make management recommendations that don't work against the stream process that's trying to happen there naturally. Let's go ahead. So this is sort of the hierarchical level of classifications. We start out again with just a level 1 geomorphic classification, channel slope, channel shape, channel pattern. Then we look at, in this level 2, that entrenchment and width depth ratio. We're starting to get more mathematical about the classification. The level 3 gets into sort of monitoring and what kind of stability do we have, what kinds of rates of change. And level 4 is getting into lengthy monitoring, sediment modeling, stream flow calculations, and that's where you really get to the final sort of inferences about stability. Let's go ahead. And just, this is sort of a graphic that gives you an idea of where you generally find the different types of streams. A's and B's are our steep gradient streams that are generally more confined. C's are the meandering streams that have riffles and pools, point bars. D streams are the braided streams. F and G are generally thought of as unstable stream types, where they're likely undergoing a channel evolutionary process that will result in a channel that modifies itself to be a B or a C generally. Let's go ahead. So these are the level 1 classification types that we found in the Sawkill back in 2006. Like I mentioned, C's and B's are generally relatively stable. It's the F's, G's that we really don't like. D's, they have their issues as well. But you can see that greater than 90% are in the of what's in the Sawkill are the relatively stable stream types. That's good news for the Sawkill and any management efforts here. Let's go ahead. We did the aerial photography analysis, and at the time, the latest was 2004. We used those. We compared those to 2001 and 1997 to determine over those time periods how far were these channels moving. Was it a sort of stepwise erosion where little bits of erosion happen year after year? Or were there avulsions where the channel jumped right out of its existing channel and moved to a whole nother area? So those are the things that you might not be able to pick up on just a in-the-field walkover. You may not realize you're in a channel avulsion and the channel that had existed for years is 1,000 feet over in the forest. So taking this step back and taking a look at it from aerial photos and remote sensing really can help identify things that you wouldn't just pick up on in the field. This is just sort of an example of where you do see avulsions. Was there a pointer?
Oh, I have it.
You have it?
Go back one.
Okay, great. So you can see the channel comes down through here, and this is what I would call an avulsion. This channel probably existed over here for a long time, and during a big storm event, it was able to cut a channel right across this bar. This is probably a point bar that built as this thing migrated its way out this direction, and then finally this slope got to be so low that it didn't support the sediment transport process that needed to happen, and ultimately the channel jumped up, cut off that whole meander, and left that abandoned. Next. So this sort of goes through and just summarizes the rates of erosion that we observed in all the different areas from 1995 to 2001, 2001 to 2004. Now we have several more coverages of aerial photography where we could bring this right up to, at least in Greene County, we've got 2025s now. I'm not sure if Ulster, here too. So, this would be a great analysis to redo and bring these numbers all the way up to 2025, add another 21 years to this period of record. Next. So again, we talked about the future application of the historical aerials. This is what I was saying in 2007. Now we have those and should go ahead and see how that analysis has changed with time. Let's go ahead. That brings us to the walkover part of it. We did the aerial analysis, we did the remote sensing. At this point, we got out and walked every mile of it, right from the start down to the confluence, collecting features like stream bank erosion, clay exposures, stream incision, berms, bridges and culvert crossings, hydraulic openings, channel obstructions, depositional features, dumped waste, grade control. Big story there for the Sawkill is that it's got great grade control, so it helps sort of head off problems you can have in an incising river. The Sawkill's got that going for it. Next slide. So I'm just going to go through sort of what we found here. We're going to start with the stream bank erosion, geotechnical failures, sediment sources. Go ahead. This is broken down by river mile along the bottom and length of occurrences on the y-axis there. And you can see, this one jumps out. We really would want to go out and find out why there's so many feet of exposed bank in this one reach. This is looking at it by length of exposure. We're going to switch to the next slide, and maybe we can just switch back and forth a couple times. But this is also erosion by those same river miles, but by area of exposure. So the last one where you have this one jumps up in length, if you go to the area, it's not as big of an issue there. So we may have a large number of eroded banks, but that are low and maybe less intense. This one jumps to the top, and this is right in the headwaters where you're likely to have those slopes that are so close to the stream. You have the stream eroding right into potentially mountainside. So you can have really high bank heights, especially in these really confined headwater valleys. So this is just two different ways of looking at exposed banks, one by length, one by erosion, to make sure you're not missing a big part of the picture. Next. Evidence of aggradation and degradation. As I mentioned, there's great control throughout, some of it man-made, some of it natural. So degradation was not a big story that we found here, but quite a bit of aggradation. Go ahead. So these were the instances of channel aggradation, again, by river mile across the x-axis, and number of observations. And as you get down into those middle reaches that Beth described as sort of the flat reaches. Yeah, so aggradation is buildup of gravel. A stable stream will transport gravel in a way that it essentially doesn't build up, or it builds up very slow over time. Where you have observable aggradation is where you'll see big deposits of gravel, either in the channel, center bars, point bars along the sides of the channel, and you get an idea, even in just one walk, how fast that's happening by how much of it is vegetated. If it's happening very, very quickly, you'll see that it's gravel deposited without vegetation recolonizing it. If it's happening relatively slow, you'll generally see these gravel deposition features, but they're well vegetated. So it gives you an idea, even in just one walk, without the historical trend analysis, it does give you an idea how fast those are happening. And then you would take those inferences, and when you redo a walk, like now, if we were to do it again, you can go back and check your inferences from before. Were these things happening as fast as we thought, or maybe they were happening much slower than we thought, and even though we predicted they were going to happen fast, we may find out they didn't. But that's what aggradation is, where the channel, a reach will be delivered more sediment from the watershed than what the channel and flow dynamics are able to mobilize out of that reach. So you have aggradation or accumulation of gravel. Go ahead. Floodplain berming and benching. So one of the ways you get a confined channel, or a channel that's separated from its floodplain, can be through natural incision. But often what we see here, this is a berm that was built to keep this water from this channel from flooding out onto these managed areas. So next slide. We can see, right through here, I would imagine this is probably maybe the village area or something. Bearsville, yeah, where lots of berms were built through that area. So, that's definitely a management concern. If we were to go back and look back at those erosion areas, these river miles were also in the higher bits. So that's often what you see as a result of berming. That channel will develop more power than it should have because it can't access that former floodplain, and that will generally encourage erosion to happen. So while you've solved one problem, you may have created another one. Next. These are the wood debris blockages that Beth was saying. You were calling them wooden gravel jams. And again, this is a management concern. This much wood right upstream of a relatively small bridge opening down here. These get deposited during floods, but they do get picked back up during the next floods. So, while there can be pluses and minuses to these, there are some where you'll want to go in and manage them. Others, you'll want to tolerate. They can have beneficial effects on ecology. Next. So you can see these were spread relatively through the watershed. Again, the Bearsville area. I think this may have been near the Kingston Reservoir dams, where there's that impoundment, and the deposition upstream of that generally helps catch wood debris. But these are the areas you'd want to go in and make sure that some of these big jams aren't right upstream of bridges or things where they can really have an impact on a bigger area than just the bridge area. It obviously is not great to have wood stuffed in your bridge and have water flowing over the road, but they generally also create backwater that can go upstream quite a distance and create flooding where it wouldn't otherwise be expected. Next. Stream bank stabilization and revetment. We go through to see how much of these areas has already been protected. Do we sometimes find that areas with more revetment also have more erosion? That can happen. Other times we'll find that the erosion that was active in these areas has already been stabilized, and we'll have high numbers of revetment and low numbers of erosion. But how those numbers interplay is an important management indicator. Next. This just kind of gives you the areas where those were observed by length, and according to River Mile, again, this area is in the middle is coming up as a kind of a concern. A lot of management activity has been done there over the years. Next. We met with different advisory groups while we were doing this to go through the results we found and find where folks were having management issues. This John Joy Road in Woodstock, that was one of them. This was, backwater from the bridge, a lot of deposition, a lot of log jams. And I think from what Jake said, there is some plan to do some management there. Next one. Beth mentioned this one as well, the Sweet Meadows area. This road is actually lower than the field over here, so you get a lot of flooding on this side before it can access this other floodplain. There may be some opportunities for floodplain enhancement through there to try and mitigate some of the flooding on the developed area. Next. And this is the Esopus confluence. The Route 87 bridge was visible in Beth's photo. There's also this crossing here. But this is an instance where these bridges may not get you anything. You could make these bridges bigger. The throughway bridge probably has pretty good capacity. This one may be somewhat less. But if the real problem is coming from backwater in the Esopus from hitting the flood stage of the Hudson, sometimes changing these bridges does not have any impact on that backwater because the backwater actually comes from something further downstream. So those are the kind of interplay and dynamics that you want to understand before you launch into a big management effort, because sometimes the problem isn't as evident as it appears. I think that's all I have for today. We did prepare a write-up of the walkover, and it is available on the town website if anyone's interested in reviewing what we wrote up all those years ago. So, thank you.